Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me here at Abernathy Farm in Fallout 4. So, we're talking today as part of the Survival Guide series. This is number 3, so third most important thing that we need to think about for survival is food. So we can survive for about a month without food, depending on a number of factors. There have been cases where people have survived longer than that, but it stands to reason that if humanity is going to live past an apocalyptic event, then some sort of food source needs to be organised. So what do we need from nutrition? What's most important? So the general guidelines is that people need about 2,000 calories per day, which is just purely energy, and that's needed for your body to function. Your actual calorie needs might change depending on your body composition, how much energy you're expending, how active you are, the climate that you're living in, your biological sex, your hormone levels, health status, many other factors. So there's all kinds of things that can affect what your daily calorie requirement is and what you should be eating in a day. But it's not just about the calories, it's not just about how much energy you take in, there's other things as well that are important. So there's a whole list of kind of essential nutrients, so minerals, vitamins, amino acids that we need to get from our diets, and we need to have a source of protein. We do need some fat in our diet to particularly to help absorb fat soluble vitamins, so that's vitamins that can dissolve into fat instead of into water. So that's vitamins A, D, E and K, and all these vitamins are essential for all kinds of things in the body. We need iron, we need calcium, we need potassium and sodium. There's a whole list of things that are needed, and one that's really important for humans is vitamin C. So humans have an absolute dietary need for vitamin C, unlike most other animals who actually can make it themselves. So ascorbic acid is another name for vitamin C, and the majority of animals can actually make that in their bodies, but humans can, and it's a trait that we share with guinea pigs of all things, who also have a dietary need for vitamin C. So if we don't get enough of that, then you end up with scurvy. So a particularly known issue on ships and things. So scurvy can lead to all sorts of unpleasant symptoms, including easy bruising, weakness, gum disease and tooth loss, poor wound healing, and even your scars. If you've got previous wounds that have healed and you've got scars left, they can actually begin to kind of open up and undo themselves, because scars aren't, they're actively maintained as scars by the body. That's something that the body has to keep kind of maintaining the scar to make sure that that wound stays closed, and vitamin C is involved in that. So scurvy can actually lead to old scars opening up again and things. So very important thing. And actually, interestingly, you can get some vitamin C from tomatoes, or potatoes. Potatoes are tomato potato hybrids, which might sound a bit bizarre, but they are actually both plants are part of the same family alongside the deadly nightshade of all things. So it's not kind of crazy that they've potentially combined. But you've maybe heard the term limey, which is a derogatory term that was used for British sailors and British people, and that came because the issue with scurvy was happening on ships when people were at sea for a long time. Most of the dietary sources of vitamin C they were perishable, so they wouldn't last the full kind of length of the journey necessarily, and it was before people really knew what vitamin C was. But it was discovered that citrus fruits prevented scurvy from developing, so the British Navy basically forced all their sailors to consume lime juice while at sea to prevent scurvy from happening. So that's where the term limey comes from, and it is used as a derogatory term towards British people, but that's the source of that. So it's not just about how many calories you can take in, but for good long-term health and survival, a good balanced diet that covers all your nutritional needs is really essential. Humans are physiologically omnivores, which means that we've evolved to be able to eat both meat and plant sources, although certain things like grass we can't digest. Cows can, we can't. So some people do choose to follow a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet. In this modern world, that is something that is, it's a luxury to have the choice. When you're dealing with the end of the world, you maybe don't have the option to be quite as picky, and if you do refuse to eat meat, say, you might have a harder time finding a good protein source and a balanced diet because, you know, food isn't quite as abundant as it was before the war. And food insecurity is a really big issue in the world, not just in the sort of what's called the third world countries, which, you know, is neither here nor there, but even here in the UK and in other developed nations, you know, food insecurity and food poverty is an issue, particularly as the cost of living crisis just seems to get worse and worse every day. So it is something that is a concern, and it is something that's quite important. And certainly in the Fallout universe, eating well is quite challenging, and there's a number of reasons for that. So let's have a chat about some of the different ways that you can find food in Fallout and what the pros and cons of each of them are going to be, and how that might look if we take a more realistic view of this situation. So we're going to head over to New Vegas now to have a look at some things there. So one of your options for finding food is foraging. So that is looking for wild plants and things that, and mushrooms and that kind of thing that you can collect. So there are quite a few of them in the Wasteland in various guises. You do find wild mute fruit, wild corn and stuff like that in Fallout 4. Fallout 3, there isn't really much of that, but the best place for finding sort of wild plants that you can forage is here in the Mojave Wasteland. So, say, just kind of down the road from Good Springs, heading towards Prim, and just kind of down past Jane's Skydiving, and we've got right here, we've got some jalapenos. So that can, you know, spice up your food. There's banana yucca, there's barrel cactus, that looks like one over there. So actually this spot here, there's quite a few. That's the white horse nettle, I think. There's a few geckos running about as well. But yeah, so you can go around and you can find these things. There's even pinto beans and pinion nuts in this game, where, so, you know, that's a kind of meat-free source of protein if that's something that you really want to have. But the plant life does quite well in the Mojave Desert, and I say just because it is a desert and has lower rainfall, it doesn't mean that things don't grow there. There's a bloatfly buzzing around. So there's another barrel cactus fruit as well. So you can collect these different items, and you can find quite a lot in the Mojave Wasteland compared to the other games, which is really nice. The downside to this method is that, you know, potentially your options are quite limited without extensive travelling, which expends energy, which means you need more food. Because if you put more energy into finding food than you get from the food you find, then you're at a net loss there. But you could make it work here in the Mojave, I think, because there is quite an abundance of natural resources compared to what we see in the East Coast games. And then obviously once you've harvested, you have to wait for it to grow back again, which in the game takes a bit of time, and obviously in the real world would take quite a long time as well. So it can be helpful, but it's probably difficult to rely on that as your only source of food, because you can end up using more energy than you gain trying to find enough to live off and things. So it's something very important to be aware of. So let's see what man-made options that we've got available to us. You find yourself in the wasteland, your stomach is grumbling, you need to find food, and soon you've got shelter sorted, you've got water sorted. Maybe it's worth checking out the old Super Duper Mart down the road. That's where people got food before the bombs, after all. So it's definitely worth investigating, there's no doubt about that. That's the reason that Moira Brown sends you here in Fallout 3 during the Wasteland Survival Guide quest. The problem is these locations can be occupied by other things like raiders or ghouls. So you could find all kinds of things. I've already eliminated the raiders, so we just got the robot friend wandering around. But when you come here for the first time, it's full of raiders. So that's something to bear in mind, that, you know, these locations are often where people hole up to have a building, so they're finding shelter and things as well. You might find some stuff, you know, canned goods and things, obviously only stuff that's well preserved, and that can be useful to keep you going. But there's a couple of downsides to finding food in these locations. One is, as you can see, they've probably already been picked over by scavengers before you come along, so there might not be much left, if anything. I mean, all I'm seeing here really is empty cans and empty bottles, so you could come in here and, you know, spend a bunch of ammo killing the raiders or ghouls, and then find that you've got nothing to show for it because there's nothing left. So, you know, that's something to bear in mind when you're looking for food in these locations, that people have already kind of got here before you and they've maybe taken most of what's available, so that leaves less for you. The other issue is that, you know, often the preserved food that's here, the quality is probably not going to be great when it's 200 years old, and it could be irradiated as well, which is, you know, often the case, especially in Fallout 3. But you could find some stuff, so it could be worth checking out. But, you know, food that you find like that, that's only going to be sustainable for a little while. It's eventually going to run out, and nobody's manufacturing it anymore. So once it's gone, it's gone. So realistically, you need something that's going to be more sustainable for the long term, and that means farming. So let's go and have a look into that. So once you've got yourself a kind of permanent place to settle and call home, farming's definitely an option, and depending on where you are, the water quality might not be great, but it could be... Oh, thanks for demonstrating that, Nick. I don't know why he's doing that. He doesn't drink water, he's a robot. Anyway, so depending on where you are, the water quality might not be as good, but, you know, which could affect your crop yields. But you really do want to kind of get crops established. So I'm here at Sunshine Tidings Co-op, so we've got corn, got some carrots, which I say I have no idea why Valentine's doing that. We've got some mute fruit plants, so nice little variety, because, you know, we want a varied and balanced diet for all our settlers and for ourselves. And the good thing about having that and having crops established is that that's something that's more sustainable for the long term. Mutated crops tend to be a bit bigger, so you do potentially get more yield as well, and they'll keep regrowing, so you can set up a supply and potentially even find ways of kind of preserving them to kind of last for longer, and giving you a nice balance to your diet so that you get all your vitamins and essential nutrients and things. The downside is, as this man here is demonstrating for us, that to do this successfully, it takes work. Somebody has to care for the plants, keep them protected, water them, and also just kind of keeping them protected from the elements and the general chaos and creatures running riot in the wasteland. And even then, if you do that, some Brotherhood of Steel guy might just come in and demand that you hand over a portion of your crops in exchange for not being destroyed by them or something like that. But it's a good setup to have, and you see that it's fairly decent kind of yield on these crops. Oh, we've got some gourds as well. So ultimately, any society that wishes to survive needs to set up some kind of longer term system for acquiring food and keeping its people fed. And we see that the NCR have kind of thought of that, and we're here at the NCR Sharecropper Farms, which is quite a huge space actually, where they're growing all sorts of crops. There's greenhouses that they've built for keeping the plants protected from, you know, birds and wildlife and things, and we've just got lines and lines of well, it's called maize in this game because corn and maize are kind of the same thing, but you know, the NCR have thought of this, and this is something that they've set up for their people. So right opposite Camp McCarran, we've got the sharecropper farms, and you can see all the greenhouses and things. So we know that, and even, you know, back in the old days of Shady Sands and Fallout 1, that Shady Sands itself had quite a large kind of farm area where they were growing crops and things, so it's obvious that that's something that's needed for a society to actually survive. They need to have a way of making sustainable food supplies for their people. Interestingly, in Fallout 3, there doesn't seem to be anything kind of quite like this. There's a couple of old farms that were kind of pre-war based, but generally speaking, there's not really any of these kinds of setups. There's not really anybody growing crops or anything. Even the kind of independent settlements, like, say, the Republic of Dave and Girdershade and things, don't have anything like that. Some places like Arifu have cattle, that kind of thing. And you can get mute fruit from food vendors and traders. Even in Oasis, where you'd think that maybe they would have something because it's so verdant with all the trees and the plants growing because of Harold, that maybe they would have, you know, plants, edible plants and crops growing there, but they don't really have that in Fallout 3, so I guess we need to look at other options. Humans are physiologically omnivores, and in a world like this, you can't really afford to be picky about your food sources. You still need to get your protein somewhere, and the easiest way to do that is going to be meat and eggs. So one of the good things about a lot of the mutated animals and insects in this game is that they're all much bigger than their pre-war counterparts, which means that you can, in theory, get a lot of meat out of a single kill. At least in theory. The game doesn't really kind of let you do that until you get the Wasteland Survival Guide from Sunshine Times Co-op, which is just up there. So most animals and insects that you find can be killed and eaten. Like these Brahmin. Where did you come from, Nick? Anyway, so that's one of the things that you can do, is to go hunting. You can find wild Brahmin. I've got some meat there. One of the downsides to this, of course, is that a lot of the animals are much bigger and more aggressive than they were before. So especially if you happen to wander into territory which is controlled by Deathclaws or Yalgwai, you can eat them as well if they don't eat you first. Let's just get a Deathclaw stick to get the weight down. There we go. So other animals can provide options for nutrition. So some of them that lay eggs, you can make omelettes from Deathclaw eggs. You can make Mirelurk cakes as well. Mirelurk egg omelettes in this game. So there's quite a lot of options there, especially in Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4. You do get a good number of recipes for making at campfires and cooking stations. So if you're good at killing creatures, you can make a killing. Pun intended. But yeah, it's a reasonable option. It's a bit more dangerous, you know, because the wildlife is bigger and more aggressive and it can attack you back. And in some parts of the world, rearing livestock like the Brahmin and the bighorners is an option too, just the same as it is in the real world. And you see that in quite a few settlements. You see it in Good Springs and Fallout New Vegas. They've got a herd of bighorners that they keep. So does Jacobstown. You've got quite a few people around that have Brahmin in all the games, really. Even in Fallout 3, where they don't tend to have crops as much, but they do tend to have Brahmin herds and the like. And some people are even enterprising enough to make money from this. So Ryan Brigg in Fallout 3, I made a video about him. He's found a method to making molerat meat more palatable, which is, you know, great idea when the bloody things are everywhere like they are in Fallout 3. So this guy, Theodore Collins, has got himself a good thing. He's got potted meat. So he has set up a cannery, and, well, he's basically taken over this canning factory and set up a thing. So you see we've got a pile of meat. We've got robots working. We've got mole rats on the table. Rad scorpion meat, rad stag meat, mole rat meat. So lots and lots of meat, and he's making these. Oh, we've got some rad stags there as well. So he's kind of set himself up with a business. He did really, really well selling all his potted meat and things, but if you've ever encountered the random encounter of the Wastelander with the stomach troubles, you find that there's been an issue with the meat that he's been putting out recently, because when demand outstripped the supplies that he could get of meat, he started using ghoul meat. So that segues us quite nicely into the next option and the most kind of unpleasant option. So I'll join you over in Fallout 3 to start with to talk about that. Welcome to Andale. So, cannibalism. Yeah, I know. But it is something that's often brought up when we're talking about survival and apocalyptic scenarios, that people will end up resorting to cannibalism, sometimes even when it's not strictly necessary. And it's an option for your character too. You can take a perk that allows you to eat people. Unsurprisingly, anyone that kind of witnesses you doing this is probably not going to be comfortable with watching you chow down on the raider you just killed and your culinary choices. So, welcome to the Smith House.
Morning.
Morning. Hello.
Morning.
So yeah, very cheerful, very friendly people.
Hello there, young lady. Good to meet you. Name's Smith, Jack Smith. Welcome to Andale, the best little town in Virginia.
Virginia's been gone for 200 years. It's, yeah, you're a bit too cheerful.
Well, that's a shame, but feel free to stop by and see us anytime.
Okay, bye.
I'll tell Linda and Junior that you said hello.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's two families here, and then there's an old man who's the father of actually all four of the adults in this town, because not only are they cannibals.
I really hope you're not thinking of breaking into there.
I mean, I am, but whatever. So, let's have a look at the basement if I can. Yep. So, let's have a look. Okay, we've got some entrails, upside down skeleton, more skeletons in cages. Yeah. So, yeah, these people are cannibals, in case you hadn't already figured that out. I'm sure that's obvious. And we see it in Fallout in a few different guises, and it's not like this is the first time that we've seen cannibalism in human society. There are historical and modern groups of people that can practice this. And in Fallout, if you ever had iguana bits, or, you know, iguana bits roasted on a stick, even though you've never actually seen an iguana in the game. Yeah, so Iguana Bob in the hub was serving up iguana bits on a stick in 2161. The prime meat was supplied by Doc Morbid in Junktown, and the Vault Dweller can end up blackmailing Iguana Bob about his products in the source. So if you've ever bumped into anyone that's selling strange meat or selling strange meat pies, bad news for you, you've eaten human meat. Rad's 1, HP plus 6. So, yeah, it's an Andale. These guys are really cheerful until you come in here and then expose the truth. So, we'll see what happens when we leave again. I notice now nobody's here. So, have a gun ready, because...
Hey there, stranger. I've got something that I want to talk to you about. I couldn't help but notice that you're poking around in my basement. So, be honest now, you wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
So you can say, yep, don't know what you're talking about, saw what you were hiding down there, almost grabbed a snack while I was there. If you have the cannibal perk, that's an automatic success. Really don't know what you're talking about.
Look, stranger, I'm not angry. I just want you to tell me the truth. If you can't do that, then I'd think you'd best head out of town.
Okay.
I'm disappointed in you, stranger, so quick to judge us. Did you ever stop to think that I have a family to support here? Judge not, lest ye be judged, as the good book says. Honestly, how many people have you killed? The only difference between us is that I'm bringing home the bacon for my family.
You mean long pork, which is a term for human meat. Well, I guess everyone's got
You
to
see,
survive.
now that's nice to hear. Every time someone discovers our little secret, it's always, oh, you're terrible people, or how can you do this? I mean, I've got a family to take care of here. I've lived in Andale my whole life, and my father before me, and his father, and his father's father.
Yeah.
This town started out with just 4 families, and that's the way we've stayed. Small town and proud, eh?
Like, yep, if that works for you.
Indeed. To each their own personal choice. It's the American way. I tell you what, stranger, I like you. Stop by here anytime and ask Linda for one of her special meat pies. There's nothing better after a hard day of work than one of those pies, I tell you what.
Okay, see you later.
I'll tell Linda and Junior that you said hello.
Yeah, so you can kind of talk your way out of it, but... Well, kind of, because these guys are apparently still hostile to me, but anyway. Yeah. Okay, I think that's just bugged out a little bit. I'm guessing that when you talk him around, you're supposed to... Everybody's kind of like cool with you, but anyway. So, yeah, Andale, they've been 4 families. They've stayed here generation after generation. Not really inviting anybody new to live there, so you can, if you talk to Old Man Harris, who lives in, I think that's his house there, then he tells you a bit more and tells you to leave town because it's dangerous and things. So they're all inbred, incestuous cannibals here, but trying to paint the picture of being a lovely little proper American town and all the rest of it. So yeah. Interesting. And there are more to it, like if you come here and you visit, if you do the quest where you go and sort out the problems in Arifu up here at the Meresti train yard, you meet the family who are kind of a different breed of cannibals in this game. So instead of killing people and eating them, they are feeding only on blood. They're taking on the kind of tenets of vampirism and not killing people whenever possible, and sort of separating themselves from human society except when they go to feed. And you can kind of make arrangements to give them, you can sell them blood packs, that kind of thing. So possibly a wee bit better, but still questionable. So let's head to Fallout 4 because there's a kind of interesting thing to do with that as well. So in Fallout 4, if you take the cannibal perk, you'll find that your companions and people will object to you being a cannibal if they witness it. And if you play on survival mode, eating a person triggers an addiction called Dark Craving, which means you can't eat normal food to satisfy your hunger and you have to eat a person. So we have killed this guy, and then we have the option of eating him, which is disgusting. Valentine didn't like it. Surprised he didn't say anything. And then, yeah, we have developed an addiction now. So the game kind of classes it as an addiction. Dark Craving, so food no longer satisfies. So what that means is that when you get hungry in survival mode, you can't just eat food to make it better. You have to eat a person. And you do stumble across some raiders that are cannibals. You stumble across the trappers in Far Harbour who have been known to engage in cannibalism, including apparently eating a synth, which is interesting. But the problem with cannibalism, aside from, you know, the kind of cultural and societal questionability of it, is that when you're eating your own species, especially if you don't cook the meat properly and just eat it raw like my character just did, you can be at risk of catching all kinds of diseases, infections, parasites and things, because you're the same species, so anything that they're infected with could infect you as well. Things like prion diseases like Kuru, which could be transferred from a person to another person through cannibalism and has been known to, there's also potential mental health implications, and it can actually affect the human psyche in some ways, in particular something called the Wendigo psychosis. There's real cultural and societal taboos about this kind of thing in the modern world, and for good reason. So, you know, cannibalism, maybe not the optimal plan. So, finding food is quite difficult in the Fallout universe, but we do have options, and there's plenty of things that we can rule out before we resort to the likes of cannibalism. But with all the giant mutated creatures in the Wasteland, that means that humans aren't the apex predators at the very top of the food chain anymore. So we can kill and eat Deathclaws and Mirelurk Queens if we want, if we're able to kill them, but if we fail to kill them, then they're going to kill and eat us instead. So you have to live your life in the Wasteland as both a predator and prey if you want to survive, and also be wary if any really nice people come up offering you strange meat pie but are cagey about the source of it. That leads us quite nicely into the next part of the survival guide. So we have the sources of food and water and shelter that we need, but now we need to keep them secure and protect ourselves and them from people that are unscrupulous that want to steal our food sources, and also, you know, dangerous predators like these guys. So hopefully you'll join me next week for that part for the security, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.